footage.
Roll that beautiful bean footage.
IMDb screen just freaked me out when everything just moved. It's like,
Freaking IMDb screens. I'm like, come on, how can you eat up more bandwidth for crying out loud?
exactly.
You go to a movie site, I just want to read the information. I don't need no fancy animation.
You ever tried doing it on your phone though?
Oh, God,
You
no.
can't even get like the full lists of people. It's like, oh, swipe, this is not Tinder.
You search for it and it looks like some kind of personal profile, and then you got to hit filmography, and then you got to hit show all in the filmography. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
What the?
It's horrid. It's horrid.
It is horrid. All right, let's get rolling here. Yes, folks, we have assembled once again some crew members to talk about the film that was 10 years in the making. And of course, we're talking about Paul Blart, Mall Cop 3. No, we're not talking about Paul Blart, Mall Cop 3. We are talking about, of course, Avengers Infinity Wars. Just a little tiny movie that just came out this past weekend. And tonight I got a great group of crew members to sit down and talk and discuss this film that is the culmination of many films in the MCU. And first off, we have for us tonight in his house, he is back. It is the BFD himself, Mr. Glenn Bittner. Hello, Glenn.
What did you just almost call me?
Glenn Bittner.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm here. I'm ready to talk about this thing that happened.
This thing that happened.
Mm-hmm.
I loved your post in Facebook. Well, that was a thing that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And next to Mr. Glenn Bittner is the one and only Mr. Paul Salzer, the Bowtie Man himself. Hello, Paul. How are you?
Guys, doing well.
Glad to have you in the spoiler room tonight to talk about, yes, Avengers Infinity War, the part 1 of 2-part storyline. And according to IBIM, the Avengers and their allies must be willing to sacrifice all in an attempt to defeat the powerful Thanos before his blitz of devastation and ruin puts an end to the universe. So, Glenn, credits roll on Infinity War and all the way to the end credits, which we'll talk about a little later. But your initial feeling with this film when it finished?
Overall, I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have issues, some nitpicky, some a little less so. I mean, if you want me to go into them now, I can, but I think we'll just save that. I enjoyed it, but I have opinions.
And I was hoping you would as well, because you are a well-versed comic book fan, far more versed than I am, though I do remember this storyline, and I remembered picking up the first issue of this comic book, the comic book that this film was based off of, and was surprised the direction they took the movie in many ways, but not so much if you take it from the movies and not necessarily the source material. Paul, how about you? And the credits roll, you get that final credit sequence, which we will talk about later, but in general, your initial feeling when it was done.
I thought it was a very powerful story. I thought it had really great characters, and it was exactly what I had wanted right at the end. So,
and for me, I thoroughly enjoyed the film. Though there were a couple things that I had slight issues with. Overall, I was like, this was a blast at the theater. Though I do like the Russo brothers. 2 out of the 3 films I've enjoyed of theirs quite a bit. I loved Captain America, Winter Soldier, Civil War, not quite as much. And then this one, yeah, it was a fun time just turning my brain off and seeing what they came up with this film, which it was interesting. The film opens and you almost get the feeling like, Thor Ragnarok and Homecoming and even, Spider-Man Homecoming, even Black Panther. You're like, oh, these films, they're kind of your little more upbeat movies. And that, I think, was just lulling people into a sense of comfort until we get to the Infinity War, because Thor Ragnarok, which was a hilarious ride, ended with the Asgardians coming face to face with Thanos' ship. And Paul, how's this film open?
Oh boy, yeah, it was it was just it was rough. It felt like they wanted to tell you right off the bat that all your expectations, everything that you've seen up to now, we're just gonna flip it around, because they wanted to set that feeling right at the beginning that whatever you expected, don't, because we're going to kill off characters, and we're also going to make them hurt. And yeah, it's just even the ooh, okay, I'm gonna calm down.
Calm down.
Even the heroes did not seem very heroic, which is very, very shocking, because the expectation of a superhero film, especially when you've got the Hulk and you've got Loki and you have Thor right at the beginning, and basically you just kind of have Thanos going in there, can I say it, bitch slapping them around. So it was like, wow, your jaw dropped, and you're like, okay, this is going to set the tone for the rest of the film for me. Good on you guys.
It does set the tone, and I like the fact they have Thanos fighting Hulk, because it shows you how big of a character Thanos is, and everybody kind of considered up until this point in the MCU as Hulk as being just this huge badass who just cannot be defeated, easily.
Except by Thor.
Easily, yeah, except by Thor. Okay, but. Which is a point I'm sure you'll want to make in a minute with this opening, Glenn. But I like that they established that, and at least for the casual fan who have just been following the MCU and not the comics, you've got here going, oh shit, he's going toe to toe with Hulk, and he just kicked his ass. Well, I guess it was a good way to establish Thanos. I think his crew, his children of Thanos or whatever, those guys we'll talk about a little bit. Those guys, you're like, okay, I can see, they helped kick everybody's ass, but
there was also that part where, okay, so you saw the ending of the film and you expected, oh yeah, the Guardians of the Galaxy are going to come in and help out, and it was like, whoops.
No, they show up.
They show up later, and it was like, wow, okay.
Yeah, they showed up much later. But really here, good. Thor is just taken out, and on one hand, I get what they were doing, and man, they off Loki, who's actually offed. I don't think Loki's coming back, which was interesting, because Loki for me was the only really decent. Yeah, I'm saying it, the only real decent villain to come out of the MCU for a while. And still with the most depth anyway. And now you have Thanos, who they actually give a lot of screen time to and some depth to here. It's like a passing of the torch going, yeah, we're done with you being any type of major villain anymore. And then they kill Heimdall as well. Glenn, how about you with this opening? Did it kind of confuse you? Because it did confuse me a little bit, though I was enjoying the moment. Where did Thor's lightning powers go?
Yeah, I'm just going to say that maybe he's tired, or he doesn't want to unleash lightning inside his spaceship.
Yeah, that's you're right. You're right. That could be true. What do you think about this opening scene, kind of that we got here in space, at least, where pretty much half the Asgardians have just got their ass kicked?
Yeah, it was an interesting opening. I like where they went, where they're just gonna be like, showing the power of Thanos in general. First of all, the fact that he pretty much single-handedly takes on the Hulk, and just is like, nope, I got this. As the people around him are kind of like, well, should we do something? And the other guy's like, no, he's fine. He's fine.
He's fine.
So yeah, it's I mean, the one thing I kind of wonder is, like, where the fuck was he hiding all this time before Thor got, tied up? or sorry, bound in pieces of his ship. Where I'm kind of like, there's it's one of the issues I have with this movie, and with a lot of the Marvel or just superhero movies in general, is the where the hell is everyone else while this is going on? That just it's like these people are just like absent for these parts, and will only show up once it's convenient for the story.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and there's some of that, though. I think they hide it a little bit better in here later on. I mean, because Hulk gets him to in his last ditch effort, transports Hulk to Earth, help bringing the Hulk and Doctor Strange together. Which, yay, we get to see Doctor Strange, which leads to them getting Tony, and leads to, I forgot the name of the guys. Glenn, what's the name of Thanos's merry band of men and woman?
The Black Order.
Is that
it's the Black Order.
It's the Black Order. Okay, so two members of the Black Order show up. Is it Squidward and a reject from World of Warcraft shows up. What, I don't know their names. I know the one is Black Maw. I'm not sure who the big guy was. But they show up, and so we get an interesting pairing, which I kind of enjoyed. Glenn, how did you feel when we get the pairing up of the alpha males of Tony Stark and Doctor Strange together? How'd you feel about that? Did you like the fact that they didn't change these characters so one shined over the other, and you actually had some clash between them?
I liked it. Mm-hmm. I was waiting. I was waiting and hoping, though I didn't think it was going to happen. I was hoping at some point one of them would say to the other, well, no shit, Sherlock.
Right.
I was really, really fucking hoping for that. And I don't know why. I mean, part of me is like, why? That would have been such a great joke. And it's not like Sherlock Holmes is owned by someone.
No.
It's long within the public domain. So
there would have been
the saying alone, I'm just like, oh, come on, do it. So holding out hope for Avengers 4.
Yeah. Hopefully in Avengers 4 that we'll get a no shit Sherlock. Yeah, because you got to have the two Sherlocks say it. I mean, but what'd you think of the pairing that they had here with, you had the Hulk in there who couldn't Hulk out. But you had Iron Man and Doctor Strange in that, who I'm fully admitting that Doctor Strange is one of my two all-time favorite MCU film, MCU, I guess it just is, characters. I love Doctor Strange. Seeing him on screen and not step down or back away because it's Tony Stark at all. I just thoroughly enjoyed, while you had the villains, they're sitting there still having a pissing contest.
Yep. I think part of that is it's ego.
Mm-hmm.
You think, would things have gone differently if a lot of these characters didn't have their own egos, which are, villains of their own in a sense, to them getting stuff done is their own egos and emotions often get in the way.
Well, that's what caused them to get in the way in Civil War. So, and the bromance. Oh, Bucky. Yeah. But Paul, how about you? Did you like your heroes kind of arguing a bit and the alpha male clash?
Yes, because it sets up things for the almost everything about this movie sets itself up well for the last few scenes. And so, yes, having them argue really, it was great. It was like foreshadowing what was to come. And also, too, like Glenn said, the egos, they have to clash because it wouldn't feel proper if they didn't. And it was great the fact that neither one of them backed down, and they both held their own, which was very impressive, especially for those two characters,
Well, especially the almighty Robert Downey Jr. Don't get me wrong. I like him as Tony Stark Iron Man, though I've got fatigue of Tony Stark being in every single MCU film, just about, I'm like, Oh, okay, here he is again. Yes, we like you, but man, go away for a little while. Um, but I was happy because I was afraid that was going to happen, that some characters were going to immediately change or whatnot because you had, these original the starters, if you will, or whatever of the MCU, but they don't. And it felt like, they did not sacrifice the characters in order to make one shine over the other. Because that shows up later when you have these two alpha males end up crossing paths with Guardians of the Galaxy, which we'll talk about more in a minute. But I personally dug the fact that out of all of the Dark Order, the other ones felt like kind of cast-offs, but they really gave thought to the Maw. And I loved the Maw, in all honesty. Paul, how'd you feel about Black Maw? I believe that's his name, right?
Ebony?
Ebony Maw, excuse me. Ebony Maw, the talker of the entire group. The magician, if you will.
Yeah, it was nice to have. I don't know. It's like, so you're always used to having the physical villain, and I think my favorite villains have been the ones that have been great talkers, and Ebony Maw was a really nice. He just seemed intellectual, and it was nice. It was refreshing, because that if you go toe to toe physically with the superheroes have a chance. But also, too, I guess intellectually, a lot of them do hold well. But also, too, the fact that you have two of the smartest people in the Marvel universe. You have Doctor Strange and you have Tony Stark there, and it was nice to pair them up with someone that was just as intelligent, very tactical, and he was just calm about it. It was just like, boom, boom, here, and it was. Oops,
No,
yeah.
go ahead.
No. I was that was really all I needed to say about that.
Yeah, Ebony Maw I liked, because he was an equal to Strange. Actually, he was more powerful in some ways. But I just like the fact he was a magic user. Basically, they weren't playing off the angle, just blowing off magic. No, here's a guy who's here's a bad guy who's using magic, however you wanted to describe it scientifically. Basically, he's using magic because they're fighting with Doctor Strange, and Strange has the spell on the time stone, and the guy can't grab it. He's like, yeah, you know how hard it is to break a spell off a dead man. So here you have magic isn't just considered a concept within on Earth. They establish it well, that you totally buy into Maw also being a quote unquote magic user, and amongst this fight, because they are in New York, who else shows up but Mr. Spider-Man? Tom Holland shows up to help add to the humor. And Glenn, how'd you feel about Ebony Maw? Is he like he is in the comic? And did you like this kind of first fight we get with this whole group? And
I have not read the comic since it first came out.
Oh, okay.
So I don't remember. But I did like, the fight scenes in general, I liked overall, though I had issues with certain aspects of them. But this one was pretty cool with, his ability to manipulate pretty much anything around him. Just great visuals.
Right. And you know what? I think this is the first time for me in a long time with the MCU villains. And I'm just as critical in DC, don't get me wrong, but with the MCU villains especially, or just superhero villains in general, I had this discussion with my friends. The problems writers tend to have with these superhero films is you make the hero so powerful or badass that whatever villain they come up against, you're like, eh. You're like, yeah, they're gonna kick his ass in the end. You know he is. Here we actually have some villains that actually feel like an actual threat to our superheroes for once. And I liked that and how they handled it, especially with the Ebony Maw character going against them. and they work in Spider-Man getting his new Iron Man Spider-Man suit, and they get on a ship and they take care of business. And Ebony Maw's one of the first villains to go, which is kind of a big surprise how they did him, because yeah, I like that. And then Stark, they kind of address the psychological damage Stark has been going through this whole time, because he also has a new mounted chest plate that allows him with nanotech. So we've gotten pretty far in our advance of our technology for superheroes. But what do you think with Stark, Glenn, and his decision to go after Thanos? Do you think they sold it pretty well through the movies now, how damaged Tony is?
Sorry, what?
Do you think they've sold so far how damaged Tony is? Because they're on the ship and they're about to. He decides, instead of going back to Earth, to go to Titan. To go.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think we've been sold on how damaged Tony is for a while now. Mm-hmm. They don't need to sell us on that anymore. And I know there's people who complain. It's like, oh, they don't have any character development. But I'm like, dude, we've had fucking 48 movies of character development. It's the whole part of an extended universe, is that so that we're not spending the first hour and a half of this movie introducing all over again every single character. I forget, right. Was it the, I don't know if it was the Post or the Times where their review was like, well, these people just show up. And I'm like, yeah, because we already know who they are, because they've all had their own movies for the most part.
We've had 17 fucking films.
We just had Black Panther. You know what? Not even, 2 months ago?
Right.
I mean, Thor's had 3 movies. Iron Man's had, 68 movies. If you count everything he's been in, the Hulk has had, depending on how you count, anywhere from like 4 to 16 movies, because it depends which ones actually are part of the universe and aren't. So yeah, I'm like, there's no, yeah. Tony's broken. We get that.
Yeah, and they decided to go to Titan to fight, which I thought was an interesting way. But it was a good setup so that they could cross paths eventually with the Guardians of our Galaxy. So the Guardians of the Galaxy, who show up and shine, and who actually throughout this whole film, and I guess it makes sense because you are dealing with a cosmic villain, the Guardians still shine pretty much through this film, wouldn't you say, Paul?
They provide a level of humor that is, they didn't change one bit, which I loved. Mm-hmm. There was always that fear that some writer will have screwed up their personalities, but they did a decent job of keeping them very, very much grounded to who they were and what they their motivations were. And not once did I not feel that these were the Guardians of the Galaxy. And even to the point where you expected Quill to go up and join in the ego party between
Doctor Strange
and Tony, sure. and he did, and it was like, yes, and he held his own too, and it was a fantastic feeling to have them in there. And it was like, I think that's the best thing about the extended universe, or any extended universe, is that if you have characters that you love, and it's like reading a good book, you always want to revisit them, whenever you can. And this movie was just a great way to like, hey, hi. And I felt really good. I was smiling when they were introduced again, because it was like, these were great. These were great characters, and they didn't change them. They didn't ruin them one bit.
No, they held true to their characters, the way they're written. Even the soundtrack. I mean, when they show up, they've got their standard Guardians of the Galaxy music playing. And that's when they cross paths with Thor floating in space. And I thought the pairing with Thor and Rocket were really good. as they go off to get Thor a new weapon. And we get to see the Collector again as the Guardians split off, and Thor and Rocket go get Thor a new Thanos killing weapon, and the Guardians show up at nowhere. But I really enjoyed how much of a part they played, and it made sense, I thought. Glenn, how'd you feel about with the Guardians of the Galaxy in this, and how much of a role they actually kind of play in throughout the story?
Well, I mean, I fully expected at the very least Gamora to play a big role,
Right.
because she is Thanos' quote unquote daughter. And if Gamora's going to play a role, then obviously the rest of the Guardians are as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not going to have her just by herself when you have Peter and everyone else. I was a little surprised when they split up,
Right?
but I think that actually worked well for the story, and I think it leads to a great scene between Rocket and Thor.
Oh yeah, that was such a great scene. Yeah, you're talking about where he decides, oh, I guess it's time to go be a captain.
Yeah, it's like, you all right, buddy? Because if anyone knows about hurting, it's Rocket.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was
Yeah, and we get a not quite so humorous Thor from Ragnarok, who was playing just about everything off. And here he has that motivation of, yeah, I got no one.
Yeah.
When you think about it, you're like, oh crap, he doesn't, does he? Thor's really is alone now, just like Rocket. And then of course Rocket's got an eye for him. Paul, did you like the scene too, where we get kind of this moment of seriousness between Rocket and Thor
with the eye scene?
Yeah.
It was nice because at first you like, if you don't know anything about Rocket, you felt that, like, so you watch him and his motivation seemed to be, he's going to get to go to the Great Forge and he's going to be able to, like, maybe steal a really powerful weapon for himself. But then as you see them in the next scene, you actually see Rocket give something away instead of just stealing. Mm-hmm. And it was just a really nice thing especially for people that don't understand the character. It was really nice to be able to have that scene to tell everybody, hey, he's a much deeper character and so forth. And also too, it was really nice to have Rocket there because you can play off the humorous bits as well, like the spinning him around in the spaceship was a hilarious scene because he wasn't expecting it. It was like, ah!
to start the forge, yeah.
To start the forge. Oh my god.
Well, or just giving Thor his eye back. I'm like, wow, the eye patch thing didn't last too long, then did it?
And the eye was acting really funny. It was like,
yeah. So they had a good serious moment, and then the eye part. So I thought they had a good balance in general. People complained about too much humor in this. But I thought it was a good balance, more so in the beginning, I think, to try to lighten you up a little bit before they smashed you. Glenn, what'd you think of the humor in general? I mean, of course, when we got Guardians, it's going to be humor, but did you think there was a decent balance of some serious moments and humorous moments in here as well, or was there too much humor?
I don't think there was too much humor. I mean, I think if you don't have enough humor, you end up with a DC film.
Oh, yeah, saw that coming. I was waiting for that.
Yeah, I think you need that balance because you still want to enjoy it, and I mean, I'm not saying that films that are dark and grim aren't enjoyable, but I mean, I think in this type of film, in the comic book type film, you need to have that balance.
Mm-hmm.
You need stuff to break the tension a bit, because otherwise, yeah, it's just, God, this is so freaking depressing.
Yeah.
I mean, if there was no jokes and it just Thanos shows up and just murders everyone in sight, it's like, well, okay, great, yes.
So we have that going.
Well, I was missing that one joke I already mentioned.
What?
We used that one joke I already mentioned.
Yes. And then we get the band back together as far as the rest of the Avengers. I thought it was interesting how quickly they were able to forgive and forget once the idea of a major galactic force coming to threaten Earth came down. Glenn, what do you think of that? I mean, the Avengers, they get back together, Vision and everybody, who split apart during the Civil War. They pretty got buddy back together quickly, didn't you think?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you know, with the number of people and most of you have to cover, I mean, some stuff is going to get rushed. I accept that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this part really felt rushed. Though Paul Bettany as Vision throughout this, because of course he is one of the Stones.
Yeah,
I have to agree with someone who said he pretty much outacted anybody else in this film.
Oh,
As Vision, I thought he sold every minute of this film as Vision. You know, especially when you get to near the end where he attacks, Scarlet Witch to destroy him, and they've been kind of knocking boots in Scotland. You know, I thought his performance was just awesome as the Vision throughout this film. Paul, what'd you think of the Vision in this and Paul Bettany's performance? Did it kind of outshine many of the others?
with the exception of, I would say Peter Parker's scene. That was his scenes were very memorable. I like the fact that they showed those two, the Scarlet Witch and him together, and kind of like being teenagers and sneaking away from the parents that are like fighting,
Well, yeah, because they're supposed to be on opposite sides.
They're supposed to be on something, but they came together, and that was a great way, like literary wise, to try to say, yeah, the team will come back together, and it is very possible because these two will do so. And I like that aspect, and I love the fact Vision was the hero that I always enjoy in movies, the one that's willing to sacrifice himself. And there were times where like Captain America was telling him, he ended up convincing Captain America that Captain America contradicted himself at often, with his whole thing. And it was really it was nice to have Vision be the Vision that you expect him to be. He's very logical about things, and yet you get to see him first time as a human, and he was very, you get to see that side of him, and you really realize that he has evolved over the span of the movies, and it was really nice to see this arc. And I think that's really the purpose of this film, is to try to show everybody, all the arcs that as they reach maturity. And Vision, like you said, was one of the spotlights, I guess, because he had a lot to change. He had a lot to start out with. He basically was, the gem, and then he, and he then to find out, oh yeah, he's not just the gem. He's a layered, complex character. He's a little bit of Tony. He's a little bit of Banner. He's a little bit, And that was a really nice touch to add. It was just a few seconds, but it was enough to really add much more to the character than you would have expected.
Well, and Vision was the only really good thing to come out of Age of Ultron. Oh, did I say that? Yes, I did. Sorry. Did not care for Age of Ultron. Glenn, what did you think of Vision and his arc and him being with the Scarlet Witch in that? Did you like this aspect of the story that they ran through?
I did, because they finally are doing something right with Scarlet Witch. And also the, exploring the quote unquote humanity. I keep saying quote unquote, but I'm going to keep saying it, whatever. Humanity of Vision is great. And we actually finally get to see that Scarlet Witch, I mean, she's one of the most powerful people that should be around, in the Marvel Universe. And, I mean, that was, it was good to see her finally unleash a bit. Yeah. But again, also it is the emotions ruling the day, because that was the Black Order's plan the entire time, was to draw her to the battlefield.
Right. Though I did love that line when they said, "Where's she been? She's been up there the whole time." She comes down and just starts annihilate. She just picks up those 5 like underground massive drill people munchers, and she just lifts them up and explodes them. And they're like, "Where the hell have you been?"
Yeah.
But yeah, because Vision got his ass kicked early and just never recovered, thanks to the Dark Order and those who aren't Black Maw. Because in all honesty, we don't really get too much personality from the rest of them, though we do get with the Wakandans, and because the Avengers Captain America and them end up pairing up with Black Panther, so we get to see Wakanda again in the Black Panther and all our favorite characters who we just saw a month ago fight. We do get a badass scene with the ladies of the film, which I thoroughly I dug this whole fight, the fight of the females, if you will, because you get all the real badass women together throwing down. And Glenn, how'd you feel about this fight in the middle of the big Wakanda space dog battle?
I like it. It's, I mean, the fact that, I mean, part of me is like why is it got to be the women fighting the women? But,
right.
But it's, I'm fine, whatever, so they can have the, I don't know, whatever, cat fight, whatever they want to call it. I mean, I think you could have just as easily had any one of those characters, go up against someone else as well.
Right.
I mean, it plays out fine.
Yeah, that one there felt. I mean, I enjoyed it. I dug it, but that one right there felt a little too set up. Like, okay, we got all the ladies fighting. This is the fight because they wanted to see Natasha and I can't pronounce the names. I do apologize. From Black Panther. Those two. Was it Oh man, I'm horrible at pronouncing names. I apologize. But anyway, the badass, one of the badass ladies from Black Panther, see them pair up. Everybody wanted to see these two fight side by side. So this was the one where I really liked it, but at the same time, it felt like the most set up out of all the fights that we had in here. Paul, how'd you feel about the battle of the female characters, if you will?
I think that it was a nice scene. It was exciting scene. It was, and also too. I mean, you expected it to happen because you had Proxima Midnight and Black Widow fighting earlier in a scene before, so you knew at least those two were going to fight. And then, of course, to have basically kind of a callback to the whole incident in Civil War where the whole Scarlet Witch and somebody from Wakanda, how would they how would they fare in a fight? And then to see them fighting together against Proxima Midnight is just it was a really nice thing, and it was just another aspect. They did a really good job with the callbacks in general with this film, and I think this is just a one of the examples that shines for me.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to see. It felt a little set up, but it was still a good fight in general. And yeah, Scarlet Witch doing what she did best, which again, you have a very powerful character in here. Makes you wonder, just do more than what she's doing. But I don't know if they maybe play off that, she's still kind of exploring many of her powers. So Scarlet Witch doesn't maybe know her complete full potential. You could have that too, but she seemed, like you said, Glenn, she seems very powerful. So you would think she'd be kicking even more ass than what she did. But
yeah,
again, you have to have, I guess, a little bit of a limit to some of these characters. Though we do have Thor, who takes the full power of the neutron star as he meets a dwarf who is really, really large, but they still call him a dwarf, played by, of course, our favorite performer by Peter Dinklage. And they create a new weapon to kill Thanos. And I'm not too familiar with this weapon now and the forge and that. How was that played out? Was that accurate to comics at all, that location, or what? Are you guys familiar with that? Probably more than I am. You read the comics. I wasn't too familiar.
Mjolnir was created in basically material from a collapsed star, which is that location. And I believe that the actual name of the location is the correct name of the forge. The fact that the Stormbreaker weapon is actually a weapon in the Thor mythology of the comic books. I think the horse Thor, Beta Ray, actually wields that weapon. I believe. So I mean, it's a very powerful weapon in its own right. So it was really nice to see it, and it was like to see how awesome of a weapon it was really cool to see. You know.
I did like the little angle they had too, since Groot was with them, how Groot is the handle to
Yeah.
Stormbreaker.
Well,
Glenn, go ahead.
I had read someplace where there was talk that that Groot actually comes from Idrisil, like the tree of life, and that it makes sense that he would, you know, they this was like months ago before they even knew that he was going to be a handle for a weapon, so it makes sense that he could use himself as that weapon. You know, it would be it's a nice little tie-in if that were true. You know.
Yeah, it is a nice tie-in, though. Like, again, a lot of this was heading into stuff I wasn't familiar with at all. Glenn, how'd you feel about the Forge and Thor taking the full power of a neutron star and the forging of Stormbreaker?
Oh yeah, bring it on.
This is a badass weapon, I take it, in Marvel.
It is. This is also one of the issues I generally have with a lot of superhero stuff in general, is so you couldn't break out of some metal wraps of ship parts, but you can take the full force of a star.
Right.
Okay.
You know, they move at the speed of plot. So
yeah, I mean, and it's not just this movie. I mean, Captain America does it too, where at times it's like, oh, so he can, punch a guy and not have the person explode, but he can grab a helicarrier and pull it. So, I mean, that's incredible muscle control. How he doesn't just, open a car door and just throw the car under the moon. So.
Yeah, it's what you run into with all these superhero films, though, or some even regular hero films as well. You build them up, and you're like, why did you just do that from the beginning, man? It's like, where'd this power go? Where have you been hiding this power? So there's this few films really long, folks. We won't be breaking down every scene, but the other, I guess, major set piece before you get to the final thing was a scene on Titan after our Guardians meet up with Stark and Doctor Strange and that, and you have Doctor Strange doing the thing with the time stone, and I dug this because it's like in the middle of the film, so you tend to forget it by the end of the film, but you realize, he does pretty much give away the second film, at least what they might have to do to win, to beat Thanos, because he does give up the time stone eventually to Thanos as Thanos beats everybody's ass. Paul, how'd you feel about this? And did you catch it that the reason why Strange pretty much gave up the time stone, though he wanted to put up a fight, maybe to give the illusion that they weren't just going to give it to him? How'd you feel about that? Because he explored the 14 million some odd timelines, and there was only one solution in which they win.
Yes, it was so well written. It was like, it was so subtle and hidden, and it's especially from the fact, like I said before, where the whole aspect of having Stark and Strange fighting each other at the beginning, being adversarial and kind of egotistical against each other, was so important, because he even, Strange says that if it came down to saving you or the stone, I'm going to save the stone because that's my job. And then all of a sudden, he's like, he mentions, well, he knows of only one great outcome, the only one good outcome, and the fact that he does give up the stone was like, yeah, no, this is what he had to do, because this is the one outcome that he needed. And it was just so well set up, and it wasn't in your face, so it was so nice and so refreshing.
Well, because you had so much shit happen from that point between that point and the end of the movie that you tend to forget, my oldest son actually reminded me because I'm like, you could start playing with a few of the plot holes, and my youngest was like, well, why didn't he just use the time stone when they were fighting Thanos? And my oldest was like, well, yeah, but he said there that there was only one outcome in which they win. So he knew he was supposed to give up.
Yeah.
Though that was a great fight between Thanos and that whole crew, following Star-Lord's plan, of course, to try to pull the gauntlet off, and they nearly do until Thanos says, "Yeah, I killed Gamora." Glenn, how do you think this played out? Do you think they handled that subtly enough where they kind of buried a bit to where you forget that, oh yeah, Doctor Strange did see only one outcome, and that's why he gave up the time stone?
I don't think it was subtle.
No?
No, I mean, the second he says, no, wait, save Tony. I'm like, oh, well, Tony plays an important role in Avengers 4 and suddenly reversing everything that Thanos is going to do.
See, and I guess I got into it. I just, I had forgotten, oh, great. Well, he gives up the stone to save Tony. Okay, fine. And then it wasn't until my son reminded me. So I guess I'm just short. I got the memory of a goldfish, I guess, apparently. But yeah, it's still, though, it was interesting to set up that, and you're like, okay, well, I know what we're going for in part 2 when you do realize why he did what he did, and it leads Thanos to Earth, where we'll just plow through, where Thor shows up with Stormbreaker and he's killing everybody, and you think he's going to kill Thanos, but Thanos doesn't. Thanos gets the stone and he snaps his fingers, and everybody dissolves in a somewhat heartbreaking scene for those who have grown up with these films.
Wait, what? What happened?
Yeah, like almost all of the MCU disappears.
Yeah, there is a sinister part of me that wishes, with because in so much of comics you have alternate universes and whatnot, that there's a part of me that wishes they would do the Clue.
Oh, nice.
And release and have multiple endings, show a different theater.
That would be fun.
Pull a Clue. Depending on which theater you go to, you'll see which ending.
Yep.
Oh.
But which one's the real one? But yeah, how do you think they handled that final scene with all of them dying? Because I heard some sniffles and stuff among the younger kids, and I realized, yeah, there's a whole generation that's pretty much grown up with these movies. So you're killing. This is like when they killed Luke for me in Last Jedi. This is kind of like for them, only a lot sooner than I had to wait like 30 some years, 40 years. They only had to wait 10 before they see their favorite characters die. Glenn, how do you think they handled it? Do you think they had a little bit of emotional punch at the end there?
A little.
I think Tom Holland
Holland, that guy can act.
Mm-hmm.
That one definitely. This was one of the things I have an opinion on.
Go ahead. Go for it.
I think it is a bit of a cop-out. And I may change my mind when I see Avengers 4, but the fact that not a single one of the big name people bit the dust.
Right.
None of them. It's every new person pretty much. But yeah, not Thor, not the Hulk, not Tony. I mean, Tony, obviously, because they've pretty much said, oh, he's important.
Not Black Widow.
Yeah, not Black Widow. I mean, and of course, they couldn't have done just Black Widow, because then it'd be like, why'd you kill the only woman? Which would make complete sense. With generally how kind of movies in general are,
right.
Especially Marvel's history of gonad guys, Super Force. But I'm like, you could have done somebody instead of.
Yeah, well, even Rhodey makes it.
But so I looked at it a different way. I didn't see it as, okay, they left all the big name stars. what I saw was they left the original Avengers, and you know that Hawkeye is going to be, because they've talked about him being in this film, but they didn't. They just kind of, had this weird little mention of him saying, "Oh yeah, he's with his family," and now that's it. But you know that in the third, or in the fourth movie, that they're just going to all come together. And to me, that's that bookend, because you got Avengers 1 coming together, and then you'll have these guys, and then they didn't have to worry. That's why almost all of Guardians of the Galaxy were gone, because it's like, well, we're not going to be able to get them in this big epic film anymore. We just want them in. We just kind of want that intimacy back of the original films, because we had the whole epic thing last, which would be this time. So that was my thought of it. I didn't look at it from a standpoint, oh, they left all of the big star cop out thing. I just thought that they're setting themselves up for that bookend.
And see, for me, I do have to agree with Glenn. It noticed the big names at the end. I would have liked to see one of them. And this is where still, and it's the complaint I've had all along, I won't burn too much time on it, just that with your internet and what's coming, you've got a Black Panther movie coming up, you got another Doctor Strange movie coming up, you've got, a few other another Guardians of the Galaxy film coming up. So those guys are going to return. So as ballsy as a lot of people are saying, oh, this is a ballsy move, killing all these characters, at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but we know they're coming back. What I mean?
But look at the two films that they actually did, that are coming out between them. You've got Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is a prequel. You have Captain Marvel, which is technically taking place in the 80s or the 90s. So there's nothing to say that any of these future films that they're talking about aren't going to be set in a prequel time frame.
Well, I guess they could do that, but if they do, that's a cop out. That's even more of a cop out than what they're doing here.
But it would show you that they are willing to kill off a character, and that's it. Maybe
they
Peter
haven't
Parker
proven that yet.
I know they haven't, but they could if they chose to. If there was enough internet hate out there about it, they could make that decision if they chose.
Which is a whole nother discussion altogether about letting the internet dictate your film.
I remember that one.
But that's the only thing that got me is, as people are saying, oh, this is ballsy and everything. I'm like, they're under contract, and Ant-Man and the Wasp isn't going to be, well, it is a bit of a prequel. At the same time, I have a feeling that runs parallel to the events of what's going on in Avengers Infinity War, or just before, or even part of it.
Right after Civil War. So whatever the time, I thought there was 2 years between these two.
It sounds like there's 2 years between these two. So, which again is throwing me off. I'm like, I'm sorry, you guys been kind of doing these chronologically off and on, a little bit chronological throughout. I'm like, and now you've got Ant-Man Ant-Man and Wasp coming out, and that's supposed to be before Infinity War. Well, now you totally threw me. I'm like, okay, you know what? Now you're just, you guys are just, you couldn't make up your mind and wanted that launch early for your Infinity War. I would have liked to see Ant-Man and Wasp before this film, but in fact, they're playing off of it now, though, in the marketing for Ant-Man and Wasp, going, where was Ant-Man versus during the film? Because a new trailer is supposed to be coming out tomorrow, I guess, for it. But yeah, I know we've jumped around a little bit with this film, but there's so much in this film to cover. I mean, from that to the Soul Stone scene, where we get the Red Skull, who I kind of liked popping up. But Glenn, you mentioned you had a few other issues with this film that I've touched on so far. What was one of the other kind of glaring things or something that stood out for you?
Yeah, the biggest one was the cop out with not killing anyone really big.
Right.
A lot of my issues come, one, with the you're as powerful as the story needs you to be at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that overall happens in these movies. The other one, I had a lot of issues in the final battle primarily.
Okay.
Is a big part of it. The kind of the shield around Wakanda
mm-hmm.
and if a ship coming from orbit hits it, it just explodes. But if enough of these flesh sacks throw themselves at it, they can push their way through.
Mm-hmm.
Minor point there. Right. But then also the fact I'm like, did every war rhino die in
the last battle
in Black Panther? Where were those? That would have been cool to see one or two of those running around. But then also it's like you open up one little section that should be fairly easy to maintain control of when you have tons of people that can fire not just regular weapons. I mean, you've got all the Wakandan who have different, energy weapon types that they can fire. Plus you've got people like, Bucky with his machine gun. Okay. But you have other heroes who can like shoot beams and throw things and all that stuff at this one tiny opening. We should just be able to pile up bodies.
Yeah, they should have been firing at that spot before they opened the shield. And then when you open the shield, you just because they had enough of their Wakanda spears where they should have been shooting the shit out of that one location.
Yeah. But then the very final fight against Thanos, I'm like, where the fuck was Thor all this time? The guy who can fly super fast is the last person to get there. Like everyone else knows what's going on, and Thor's just like, dum da dum da dum. I'm just going to shoot some lightning around, and then so much, and maybe that's the obliviousness and his ego again, which I think is what a lot of it comes into, and going for they'll just stab him in the chest. It's like even though he's taken a pounding from the Hulk had been fine. It's like, why didn't you just, dude? You have an axe. You know what an axe can do? An axe can chop an arm off at the shoulder.
Right? Yeah, that's what I was wondering on that. I'm like,
just cut his arm off. You can't snap a finger if your arm's disconnected.
You cannot push a button if you disable the hand.
And then also there's numerous times when if the heroes weren't stupid, they would have won. If Star-Lord had been like, I'm going to get mad now because of Gamora, and I'm going to hit you in the face, well, the glove would have been off and they would have won.
Right.
If the Hulk hadn't waited for Loki to get that good quip of we got a Hulk, maybe he and Thor together could have pounded Thanos into the dust.
Yeah.
And then also just the fact that Thanos only uses the gauntlet at specific times.
Yeah, that's the one thing I had wondered. I mean, when he showed up, I'm like, you would have think he would have just exploded everybody and gotten his stone from Vision and call it a day.
Change reality.
Yeah.
Just change reality. Nope, your shield's down.
Yeah.
Nope, you're turned into a Tetris puzzle like I did to Drax over in Nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So stuff like that, and that's a common thing in comics is these people have all these powers, but it's just so many times it just comes down to let's just punch stuff a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I had a lot of stuff. It's minor.
Mm-hmm.
It's little things that it's and a lot of times I spend a lot of time thinking after the movie and I find all these critical things. But these are things that popped up to me like immediately, where I'm like, so they're pulling his glove off, and I'm like, oh, and before he even said, I'm like, this is going to say something. She's going to be like, oh wait, he's in pain. I'm like, well, he's going to mention how Gamora's dead, and then Peter's going to get all pissed and screw everything up. Sure enough, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, Thor stabs him in the chest. Be like, well, why did you cut his arm off? Because now he's still going to before he dies, snap his fingers and just change everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's little things that I've come to expect from a lot of these movies where it only advances because someone does something stupid sometimes. Which I guess makes them, flawed, which I guess makes them more relatable, maybe. I don't know. But I would think that if I can think that chopping someone's arm off is a good idea, I would think that a seasoned warrior who is, how old is Thor? How many thousands of years old?
1,600 or something.
1,600 years old, whatever it is. Couldn't think that, maybe I'd chop his arm off or cut his head off.
Yeah. I mean, well, he threw the axe. He knew the axe was that powerful and it was gonna, beat his gauntlet power of trying to deflect it. Just go for the hand and let the axe shatter the gauntlet.
Yeah, that too. I mean, um, I mean, then you don't get you don't get the people dissolving, and you don't get Spider-Man doing his best Doctor Who of I don't want to go.
Hey, that actually I like that though. Tom Holland.
Well, that's what I said. If you don't have that, then you don't get that.
Yeah, because Tom Holland acted the shit out of that.
You need these stupid things to have this kind of impact. And then to have that great post-credit scene. You need to have that impact, I guess. But like I said, I still enjoyed it. I walked out of there, liking it. I'll see it again. I don't know if I'll see it again in the theater, maybe.
Sure.
But I also find myself rewatching movies a lot less often than I used to, because I find that the more times I watch things, the more grumpy old man me comes out and is like, "Oh, I missed that thing before, and that's all wrong, and this is wrong." I don't want to be one of those guys who's going to end up, on IMDb going, "Well, here's a goof. If you go frame by frame, there's a point where you can see a shadow of someone who's not there for 1/68th of a second."
Oh yeah.
So
yeah. It's a little tough to do occasionally, though. Then you get movies like It's Alive 2, and where you can actually see the boom mic on the ground coming around the coffee table, literally gray, just like the color pants the character's wearing, so they could try to hide the fact they have the boom mic there. So sometimes they're a little more obvious, but I get where you're going. I don't watch some movies as much as I used to either, because you start to really pick things out with the multiple watchings. Paul, how about you? Issues that may have came up? I know you really enjoyed the film, but like anything didn't sit well with you?
Oh yeah, it wasn't. It was not a perfect film. There were just certain things that I don't know. There were certain expectations. Like I wanted it to be more closer to like the source material in some aspects. Just like, oh yeah, and then Drax should be doing this, and Nebula should be pulling off and none of those things happened. It was like, crap, I forgot. I'm watching a movie, not reading the comic book. So those type of things are always subconsciously going to affect me, regardless of how much I try to suppress that emotion. And that's just always I guess I can't even think of the word. It's always the what's going to happen if you love the material so much that there's always going to be that chance of it's not going to be entirely perfect. And that's what this movie was. It wasn't entirely perfect, but it did a lot of things that I wanted it to do. So I was okay with it. And that's, and yeah, there were certain things that people can complain about, but it's probably the closest thing that I've seen in a long time that meets the epic crossover comic book things that you would expect in Marvel. Marvel every so many years has one of these, and this is the first time we got to see it in the MCU. And I think they did it fairly well, down to the quirk of Thanos. Thanos always seems to have this weird thing. He doesn't wield the full power like that he should, because I think subconsciously he doesn't feel like he needs to use it, or maybe he has an ego, or maybe he doesn't think he's worthy enough. And so that's, I think, why he kind of doesn't use the Infinity Gauntlet, because if I would have gotten it, it would have been right away. Snap, did everything, because I would have won, or I would have reshaped reality the way I wanted to. And, but I think they tried to spend a lot of time with Thanos telling you that this is a complex villain. This isn't I'm not Doctor Doom. I'm not going to try to recreate the universe in my image. All he wanted to do was eliminate half the universe, half the population. And that was his only goal. It was a driving goal, yes. But, and so his character it grew on me. And it was a lot of the things that I would have normally nitpicked on or not even nitpicking, just that would have rubbed me the wrong way, I was okay with. It was because they did a good job of explaining it, at least in my kind of understanding. That, yeah, I guess that's believable in his character. And I know some people won't think that way because they'll be like, well, that's just they did it because they couldn't figure out how to do it. If he would have done that, there would have been the end of the movie, and there was no plot device that was going to get them out of it. So.
Yeah, I did like the how they set up how he thought his logic. He's trying to make a good argument, to which you're like, yeah, I can kind of see your point, but the way you're going about it, dude, is way wrong. You got a problem, and you're trying to fix a light bulb with a hammer, man. It's just not working.
Comic book reasoning.
That's the one thing I do remember from the comic is his original motivation because in the comic that I read, it was actually in the very beginning. I didn't read the issues where he got the stones. I had read the issue after he already had the gauntlet. And originally it was to impress Lady Death, wasn't it? Glenn,
get her eye, get her attention.
Yeah, get her attention, yeah.
And that was his original motivation. So, they kind of changed that here. Otherwise, they would have had to introduce another character, Lady Death. Because everybody dissolves right away in the original one. So that kind of, got me a little, what motivation they were giving Thanos. But I liked how they had that to where he wanted to see balance and wipe out half the universe. I'm like, okay, yeah, yeah, I got you. I like the development they did for his. We spend a lot more time than I thought we would have on Thanos, which was a good thing, though. So you at least get this character fleshed out, so you don't have to waste too much time on that on the second film. To which I will agree, as much as I loved everything in this film, I have to agree with my older son that, yeah, this film is totally a Two Towers type of thing, to where it was just a complete setup for part two. From start to finish, it was really a lot of setup for the second half of this epic story. And it felt like setup. You're just like, okay, yeah, we know there's a part two, which now again is called Avengers Infinity War Part 2, because it was called that. Then it was called Untitled Avengers Film. And now it's back to Avengers Infinity War Part 2. At least it is on the director's IMDb. So, which I know we're getting a little late here, but I do want to run through quick, because one of the things I found interesting, if you look at the trailer for the Infinity War, and it's something that we're going to have to watch in the future because I think we're going to get more of it. Paul, did you notice there was a whole lot missing in this film that was in the trailers? They threw a lot of red herrings before this film came out, didn't they?
Yes, because they knew that people would be like taking magnifying glasses to every single inch of the trailer, even to the fact where I think I even remember seeing the Hulk in the Hulk form, like running.
Yes, there's an epic scene where you've got Bucky, you've got Rogers, you got Black Widow, you got War Machine and Falcon and the Wakandans and Hulk all running towards the camera in the trailer, and that's not in this film
but
at all.
It might be. It could be.
Well, and then we also get the scene.
Oh, so you saw one of the other endings?
Yes, yes.
Just like another scene in that exact trailer, you've got Rogers. You've got that scene where Thanos brings his hand down trying to crush Rogers, and Rogers is actually putting up more resistance than Thanos thinks, which I kind of love the expression on his face. But in the trailer, he's only got 2 stones on his glove.
Yeah.
In the trailer, but in the film, no. By that point, he's got all of them, but the last stone, the Mind Stone. I'm like, wow, they threw a lot of herrings, and then IMDb as well. I made up bingo cards for my boys and I I'm morbid like that. I'm like, okay, we're gonna check off who dies throughout the film and see who could fill up their card with the most squares.
Who won?
My son did with 9.
Oh,
He had
wow.
9 names on his card that got covered. I think I had 8, and my youngest had 8. But they had the entire cast of like every Marvel film listed in the cast listing for Avengers Infinity War Part 1 before the film came out. Because when I made the bingo cards, a number of the names of people that weren't showing up in here at all. So they even used IMDb as a kind of a red herring. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. And I wanted to ask you both how you feel. And Paul, I think we got kind of the impression that you liked the fact that they throw red herrings like that at you before the film came out. Is that what you're kind of saying, that you like the fact that you had
Yes.
misdirection?
I do. I thought, it was just kind of, hey, good on you. You were clever. You knew that people are going to scrutinize. So let's kind of punish them for being that,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm being clever by scrutinizing over your trailer so I can figure out your story before it happens. And then it's like, oh, wait, that's not what I expected.
Because Peter Dinklage's character was not named at all either before the film came out. It just said Peter Dinklage was in the film, but he didn't have a name to his character either. And now there's a name there. Glenn, how about you? How do you feel about that of having a trailer and information in that be completely misdirection to what's actually in the film?
I have no problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's better than the giving everything away in the trailers, which is usually more of a thing.
Oh God, yeah. Which trailer was it that we watched at the beginning? I think it was the new Harry Potter film? Well, not Harry Potter, but the Fantastic Beasts film, I think it was. Or there was one other film. It was a film that came out. We're like, oh, this looks like a really cool movie. And the trailer kept going. And we're like, no, stop now. No. Okay. You're just revealing the entire movie. Thank you. It was like, oh my God. Yeah, I like
people will die at the end. No, just kidding.
with as microscopic with surgical tools people are on the internet with information. I didn't mind as well that they had a lot of red herrings out there for this film to try to avoid as many spoilers as possible, though I guess Tom Holland had loose lips. The studio told him, dude, you got to shut up. I didn't watch any of the interviews or anything, but apparently he was giving away a few of the spoilers because there was a kind of a running joke of they didn't let Tom Holland talk anymore because he was letting out some spoilers, and they're like, dude, shut the fuck up.
There's a compilation video out of Benedict Cumberbatch stopping him from giving out too many spoilers in numerous interviews.
Well, they paired those two up everywhere they went, so probably because they're both British, but no.
Yeah. That's exactly why, because a lot of their stuff was in Britain
and UK. Yeah.
So
well,
and they both speak the same language, so
yeah. They speak British. I don't understand a word they say because they speak British. I don't know. It's not English. No, just kidding. It's a joke, folks. It was a joke.
All your Great Britain viewership.
Yes. I mean, who says schedule like that? I mean, come on. Anyway, so final question for the evening, and then we'll close it up here because, like I said, you could go on some more with this film if we really want to pick it apart, which I think we've touched on it fairly well, and you've listened to my ramblings long enough. But I just want to know favorite pairing or fight in this film. Paul, we'll start with you. Favorite pairing of heroes or fight in this film? Either one. Which one was it?
Probably Rocket and Thor. That pairing, not a fight, but a pairing. It was fun. The characters seemed to fit. They had a common. Now they have a common background, and they seemed very genuine. And there were a lot of comic moments that lifted me up when I needed to be lifted. So So that's why I like their pairing the best.
And Glenn, how about you? Did you have a favorite fight or
It was
pairing?
also Thor and Rocket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they played well on each other, I think.
Well, that whole part was actually written really well. I wanted to see more of that. We kept jumping away, but that whole section with the Forge and Rocket and Thor and even working Groot in um that whole story chunk of it, of getting the Stormbreaker, I loved. That is probably one of my favorite parts too. I enjoyed that pairing, though I will say I'm a big Doctor Strange fan, so I really enjoyed seeing him clash with Tony. That was fun too. But it definitely, Rocket and Thor actually get some really great moments in here. And hey, they even gave Mantis at least a little bit more to do outside of just being a joke. So you got to give props there. She actually put Thanos at bay, which couldn't have been that easy. So lots of characters in here, lots more to discuss, but we'll wrap it up here tonight. I hope this whet your flavor and gave you some food for thought on this film that is just breaking box office records left and right. No surprise there. Nobody knows exactly how much this film costs to make. But it's guaranteed they probably made most of their money back already this opening weekend. How well it will do the second weekend, though, we'll have to see. But now's the point in the film. Now's the point in the show where I have my guests tell you where you can find them at when they're not here. So, Glenn, where can they find you at, sir?
Well, right now I'm at my house. If you know where that is, that's kind of creepy. Stop stalking me. I mean, maybe. I don't know. Depends who you are.
What if we bring beer?
Maybe. But again, it also depends who you are. If you're Scarlett Johansson, that's fine. And Chris Pratt's fine too. I wouldn't mind hanging out with him. He seems like a good guy too. Yeah. Or Anna Kendrick, she'd be a hoot to hang out with. So any of those ones, they can all come over. It'd be great. We could play a board game. It'd be awesome. Otherwise, you can find me on Facebook with BB Bunker, Guy in a Bunker Productions, a couple of my games that I'm working on, Demon Eater the RPG. You can also find me on the Adventure Party, my gaming podcast I did with the amazing Brad Ludwig on gncast.com. The BB Bunker is kind of in the middle of I have no idea how long hiatus, but that is on YouTube with the Beaver Bunker and Guy in a Bunker Productions, as are my handful of short films. Otherwise, just follow me on Twitter at Guy in a Bunker.
Awesome. And Paul, go ahead.
You can find me at the Film Jerks podcast on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. And you can also find out about a project that I really, really enjoy, which is called the Northeast Wisconsin Horror Film Festival. And you can find out more about that at newhorrorfest.com.
Great stuff, gentlemen. Yes, please check out their stuff. There is links to it on Special Mark Productions under Friends of Special Mark Productions, links to their wonderful stuff that you can find out there on the interwebs. I hope you enjoyed our discussion this evening. I know I did, and I have some things to take away to think of, and I hope you do too. And yes, we will cover when part 2 eventually comes out. We've got a couple Marvel films in between there, and we'll see how all of this craziness plays out. Will the second weekend of this film be as big as the first weekend? Probably, because I don't think anyone really booked any good movies the second weekend after this film came out, except for that Overboard remake, which, oh dear God, that trailer's painful. So there you have it, folks. Thank you for listening. And now I think we'll just say good night, gentlemen.
Good night, gentlemen.
Thor rule.